I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what reason does the gentleman from Maryland rise?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak out of order for 1 minute for the purpose of inquiring of the
Without objection.
Majority Leader the schedule for the week to come. And I yield to my friend, Mr. Cantor.
Thank the gentleman from Maryland, the Democratic Whip, for yielding. Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the House will meet at noon for morning hour and 2 p.m. for legislative business. However, no votes are expected in the House. On Tuesday and Wednesday, the House will meet at 10 a.m. for morning hour and noon for legislative business. On Thursday, the House will meet at 9 a.m. for legislative business. We currently expect last votes for the week no later than 3 p.m. on Thursday, but members are advised to keep their plans flexible as we continue to work towards adjourning for the first session. Similarly, members were informed yesterday that we now expect to be in session and voting the week of December 12th. The exact voting schedule is not yet known and will depend on the progress of our legislative business. Next week, the House will consider a number of bills under suspension of the rules on Monday and Tuesday. A complete list of these bills will be announced by the close of business today. For the remainder of the week, the House will consider 2 bills which are part of the House Republican Jobs Agenda. H.R. 10, the REINS Act, sponsored by Representative Jeff Davis of Kentucky, and H.R. 1633, the Farm Dust Regulation Prevention Act, sponsored by Representatives Christine Noem of South Dakota and Robert Hurt of Virginia. In addition, we may be able to go to conference on a couple year-end items, and we may consider legislation related to expiring provisions of existing law. Again, Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman for his time, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his information. If I can clarify, and I understand that we are coming up to the end of the year. There is a lot of business which needs to be done in the time remaining, and so I understand his urging to be flexible. My members have asked me, I'm sure your members have as well, Friday the 9th is scheduled on the calendar to be a non-work day. As a matter of fact, the 8th was the target date. Neither side very seldom, very rarely meets its target. But can you, in your flexibility, clearly we've told our members the following week, the week of the 12th, that undoubtedly we're going to be here. But can you give them some sort of confidence level with respect to the 9th, or is that not possible? I yield to my friend.
As Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, it is our intention to finish legislative business for the week on next Thursday at 3 p.m. And again, to remain flexible while we monitor the progress of all the discussions going on with the gentleman's side of the aisle, both in this chamber and the one across the way.
Reclaiming my time, thank you for that. Let me posit a possibility here. Thursday at 3 o'clock, clearly I don't believe we're going to have finished the business that we need to finish before we leave. Therefore, my presumption is we will be back in the following week. Therefore, Friday would not be the last day, and therefore we could do whatever we have to do on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And my understanding, we ought to plan on a 5-week at least for the following week.
I'd say.
Is that correct? I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd say to the gentleman again, the request is for members to leave their schedules flexible. As I indicated, that we do expect to be in session the week of December 12th, and the exact voting schedule is unknown at this time and will depend upon the discussions surrounding the issues that we need to address prior to the Christmas holiday. I yield back.
Further on the schedule, just so our members have pretty clear information, the week of the 19th, which is the following week, can you give me some thought on what you are advising your members with respect to the week of the 19th? I yield to my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I say to the gentleman, I join with the Speaker in saying that we want to be out of here by the 16th, and it'll all depend on whether we get the work done. So it is not our desire to be here the week right running up to Christmas. And I would say to the gentleman, it is my hope that we can finish our business by the end of the week of the 12th. I yield back.
Well, I want to tell my friend that there's overwhelming bipartisan unanimity on the gentleman's hope, but for purposes of My members, I will say that I would hope our members would take the flexibility beyond the week ending on the 16th and make sure at least on the 19th and 20th and 21st they're flexible as well. I think none of us want to be meeting that week. But we have a lot of work to do, as the gentleman knows. The gentleman has announced that we may go to conference next week on the Milcon bill that was passed by the House and the Senate. It's the only bill that I think is in that status. Do you anticipate other bills being added in that conference? And of course, we all know there are 9 appropriation bills which still remain unpassed, a number of which have not passed the Senate, and some of which have not passed the House itself. Can the gentleman clarify the situation that may result or may be effective as it relates to such a conference with respect to the other appropriation bills? I yield to my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the gentleman is asking about the shape or form of an appropriations package and what it is we'll be voting on, as the gentleman knows, the committee on both sides of the aisle is engaging in discussions to try and finish up our work and look forward to that happening, again, within the time frame that both of us would like to see happen. I yield back.
That doesn't clarify it very much, but I understand the gentleman's problem with respect to what is being done. Let me ask the gentleman, if we can't get agreement, is the gentleman, in light of his focus on the 16th as the date of adjournment, is the gentleman saying that we might consider a CR for some period of time, either the balance of the year continuing resolution or a continuing resolution for some other time? I yield to my friend.
Our hope, thank you, Mr. Speaker, our hope is, again, to be able to avoid that so that we can have a full appropriations package to dictate the priorities that we can agree upon for spending the rest of the year. And again, as the gentleman knows, we are operating within the context of the Budget Control Act, the agreement that was put into law at the end of the debt ceiling discussions in the beginning of August of this year. As you know, as the gentleman knows, the amount of spending reductions is not enough for many of us on our side of the aisle, and perhaps may not be enough or too much on his side of the aisle. But we are operating under the deal that was agreed upon, and the hope is to try and finalize all bills, and we are working towards that end at this point. And I thank the gentleman for the question.
I thank the gentleman for that information. I'm pleased to hear that he is going to be sticking with the level of funding that we agreed upon. I think the gentleman's observation is correct. There are many people on my side who believe that is lower than is necessary to meet the responsibilities they would like to see met. And on your side, it's too much in terms of the fiscal situation that confronts us. But I'm pleased to hear that we're going to be consistent with the 1.043 discretionary number that was set forth in the Budget Control Act. Also, my friend knows that in the Budget Control Act we also provided for some headroom for emergency spending as a result of disasters. The gentleman well knows our region and the Northeast was hit very hard by a hurricane. We've had an earthquake. We've had tornadoes and other natural disasters. That gave $11 billion of headroom. Will we continue to honor that part of the agreement as well? I yield to my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said earlier to the gentleman, our intention is to operate and abide by the terms of the Budget Control Act. Yield back.
I thank the gentleman for that. I was profoundly disappointed that the so-called super committee or the special committee on deficit reduction either was unable to reach an agreement on a $4 trillion at least agreement to reduce our deficit, or, as I had urged individually, to extend its life for a period of time, 60 to 90 days, which would allow us further opportunity to reach such a deal. I think that is absolutely essential for our country. I think it would be an extraordinarily plus for our economy if we were to reach such an agreement. I think it would raise the confidence of the American people and raise the confidence of the international community, and not inconsequentially the rating agencies as well. We didn't reach an agreement. We didn't extend the life of that commission. I would like to see us set up another process which would give us accelerated consideration of such an agreement. Having said that, we built into the Budget Control Act a disciplinary consequence of that failure, and that was the sequester, a $1.2 trillion across-the-board cut divided equally between defense and non-defense discretionary spending. The Speaker has said that we are morally bound to accept the defense cuts if the supercommittee failed. That's a quote. I wonder if you support the Speaker in that commitment.
I'd say, thank the Speaker. I say to the gentleman that I don't know the quote from which the gentleman pulls as to the Speaker's statement. I know that I share with the Speaker a commitment towards fiscal discipline, and that there will be the requisite cuts to go along with the increase in the debt ceiling that will occur by law at the end of this year. It is my hope that we can act in a bipartisan way to find a way to implement cuts that can replace the across-the-board cuts that will do what I believe is irreparable damage to the Defense Department and our ability to defend this country. And if I could, Mr. Speaker, quote from Secretary Panetta, who said as recently as Monday, if Congress fails to act over the next year, the Department of Defense will face devastating, automatic, across-the-board cuts that will tear a seam in the nation's defense. He went on to say the $500 billion in additional cuts demanded by sequester would lead to a hollow force incapable of sustaining the mission it is assigned. Furthermore, the Pentagon's ability to provide benefits and support for U.S. troops and their families also would be jeopardized if the cuts as designed would go into effect. He ended his statement by saying, Mr. Speaker, that our troops deserve better and our nation demands better. And I'd say to the gentleman, it is my hope that we can work in a bipartisan fashion to try and do that which eluded the supercommittee and the other efforts along the way this year to try and come up with the requisite cuts. Again, I hope that we could do so and to make sure that the cuts are there, not to avoid the cuts, but to make sure the cuts are there, but not allow them to eviscerate our ability to defend this country. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his comments, and I appreciate Mr. Panetta's quote, I believe Mr. Panetta's quote is an accurate quote, and I believe substantively correct. But let me give the gentleman another quote from the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Michael Mullen. I know the gentleman knows Admiral Mullen, who served so ably as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he said, quote, "The most significant threat to our national security is our debt," period, close quote. And he went on to say, and the reason I say that is because the ability of our country to resource our military and have a pretty good feeling and understanding about what our national security requirements are is going to be directly proportional over time, not next year or year after, but over time, to help our economy. So I would agree with the gentleman that we need to reach a bipartisan agreement. I would hope the gentleman would share my view that we need to reach a bipartisan agreement on a big deal. A little deal, as the Speaker and I have discussed, will simply push off till next year a decision and the year after, just doing it incrementally. That will not give confidence to the markets. It will not give confidence to the business community. It will not help our economy either domestically or internationally. So my concern, I tell my friend, is if we now walk away from the sequester, as we have walked away from too many agreements in the past, if we walk away from the sequester, we will again remove the discipline, remove the incentive, remove the imperative, as the gentleman points out, remove the imperative for coming to a bipartisan agreement, which, as Bowles, Simpson, Domenici, Rivlin, the Gang of Six, as the 100, the 40 Republicans and 60 Democrats, as the 46 equally divided between Republicans and Democrats have said, we need to reach a balanced deal, a deal which will restrain and cut spending, a deal that will deal with entitlements, sustainability over time, and a deal that will provide a revenue stream that will allow us to fund what we believe to be absolutely essential, of which, as the gentleman points out, and he and I agree, national security is one. So I would hope that we would not walk away from that disciplinary incentive to, in fact, have Republicans and Democrats come to an agreement. I'd be glad to yield to my friend.
I thank the gentleman. And, Mr. Speaker, no one is talking about walking away from fiscal discipline. I share in the gentleman's desire to try and address the real problem here, which is Washington spending. As the gentleman knows, the Republican majority in the House has the only plan on the table that actually is a big deal that fixes the problem. And unfortunately, there's just not an agreement on those very big issues. And as I've said and indicated earlier, there have been at least 3 attempts this year to chase the so-called big deal. And the problem is there's no agreement. There's no agreement on doing what's necessary to fix the real problem. And so if we've been there, and the President himself has said that there may be some issues that have to be disposed of or resolved in next year's election, but it doesn't mean we can't make some incremental progress. And I disagree with the gentleman, Mr. Speaker, that somehow if we make some progress, that somehow takes away from our ability to solve big problems. We've already demonstrated around here the bar is pretty low when it comes to fixing big problems, and that's unfortunate. But it doesn't mean we can't work incrementally together to address priorities. I'm with the gentleman. I know that the response from the markets and otherwise are not going to be as positive if we don't fix the problem through a so-called big deal. But the point of contention is, one, the unwillingness to fix the real problem, because it's we and the majority that have put forward the only fix long-term, as CBO would say. And then the other point of contention is we don't believe that now is the time to raise taxes on small businessmen and women. And it's not the millionaires and billionaires. That's not the point. We don't believe that when you want to grow the economy, when you want to create jobs, that we should be putting a higher burden on the small business people of this country to create the jobs we want. So if we know that there's that divide, we've already seen it play out for 8 or 9 months, let's try and work incrementally together in a bipartisan way, the way most people do that have differences. Come together where you can, set aside the differences. Yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his comments. I believe that both sides have shown flexibility in some respects. Certainly, a number of Republicans and Democrats showed flexibility on the Bowles-Simpson Commission. Now, none of the House members on the Republican side showed that flexibility for reasons that I've heard them articulate. I understand they had reasons, but unfortunately we didn't get to the 14 votes in a bipartisan way on the commission. As you know, both I and I was not on the commission, but I supported the commission's report, would have voted for the commission's report, as did Mr. Durbin, the minority whip in the majority whip in the Senate. Let me say to the gentleman, with respect to small business, nobody wants to put taxes on small business. As a matter of fact, we want to reduce taxes for small business. We offered that on the floor in the United States Senate yesterday. Every Democrat but one voted for that yesterday, and unfortunately, it did not pass. Your side, as you know, offered an alternative which didn't even enjoy the support of the majority of your party. So that we need to get to bipartisan support, but I wish the gentleman would when we talk about trying to ask some of the wealthiest people in America to pay a little more, not a lot more, but a little more, to meet the obligations so our country is fiscally sound, would not keep putting forth this, what I believe to be a windmill of small business. We are for small business. This tax cut would reduce substantially taxes on small business. Your party majority voted against it in the United States Senate. It hasn't been brought to the floor. We would hope that we would extend the tax cut for middle class, working people, and not restore that tax, and that would affect both individuals and, as the gentleman knows, small business. So that we have a tax cut that we're recommending. The President's gone all over the country and talked about, but it hasn't been brought to the floor. We think that's regrettable. We would hope you would do that. Furthermore, frankly, the millionaires' tax, the billionaires' tax, is, as you know, a net taxable income level. Not going to hurt small business at all, not going to hurt job creators at all. And very frankly, I will tell my friend, we continue to follow an agenda which I don't think you can quote me an economist that will tell me that your regulatory bills that we've been spending time on day after day, week after week, which I know sounds good to your people, and we need regulatory reform, we need regulatory simplification. We need to make it in America. One of the ways we need to do so is make it profitable to make it in America. I agree with that 100%. But I don't have any economist who's told me that that's going to create jobs. And as a matter of fact, Bruce Bartlett, an economist for the Reagan administration and Bush administration, says specifically it will have little, if any, effect. Do you have an economist who said that that's going to grow jobs? I yield to my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me respond to some of the gentleman's questions. First about Bowles-Simpson. And I think maybe some of the position that was taken by the House members in Bowles-Simpson reflects the fact that it didn't fix the real problem. Again, it didn't fix the entitlement problem we have in this country given the demographics. And that's the real problem. And so if you don't fix the real problem and you go raise taxes, which the Bowles-Simpson plan suggested and gave you options to do, it's like throwing good money after bad. And I think the American people are tired of it. We have to fix the problem. And that's what we want to do. And as far as the sequester is concerned, I want to reiterate that we're not talking about, and I'm not suggesting, not doing all the cuts. Because we believe, and this is the change that we put in place here when we became majority, we believe you shouldn't be raising the credit limit of the country without turning things around and stopping the spending. So we're not talking about, or am I suggesting not doing all the cuts. What I'm saying is we need to work together to find the commensurate cuts that aren't those that disproportionately affect the defense of our country. And I think the gentleman agrees with me. A priority is the defense of our country. And that's why if we can't see our way clear to even finding $1.2 trillion through the Joint Select Committee process, then let's look to see how we can come together in an incremental way. But I think the American people are looking for some progress here. But I want to tell the gentleman, again, I don't believe that raising taxes is a good thing. And again, the gentleman continues to talk about balanced deals, and that is a euphemism for saying raising taxes. But look, if we disagree on that, if the gentleman thinks it's good to raise taxes, then we have a disagreement. So let's instead focus on the areas where we can actually find common ground. And the common ground should be, as the gentleman suggests, on small businesses. Now, every economist there is will tell you that uncertainty, that added costs, will provide an impediment to job creation. Now, I'm sure the gentleman has visited small business people in his district like I have in mine. And the kind of regulatory measures that we brought forward, whether it's regulations being proposed by the EPA, those being proposed by the NLRB, or any of the other measures, the ones that we passed on the floor today, these are measures to remove the uncertainty of added cost to our businesses, our small businessmen and women, Today's measures and this week's measures went to the fact that we need some common sense put back into the regulatory process. We want to make sure that agencies take into consideration their actions and the consequences that those actions have on small businesses. We want to make sure that the agencies are going through a cost-benefit analysis. That's a balanced and sensible approach, and yes, I think you will find agreement among economists. If you've got that kind of certainty, you will lend the process towards a better economy to create jobs. And I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his comment. I take from his comment, however, that he doesn't have an economist who has said that these bills are going to grow jobs. I agree with him that economists certainly believe that over the long term, certainty is a good thing. We all agree on that. I hope all of us agree on that, and I would like to accomplish that. That's one of the reasons I'm for a big deal. But let me give you a quote from Ben Bernanke as it relates to your saying we want to raise taxes. Nobody wants to raise taxes. I will tell my friends, I've been in office now for a long period of time, some 40-plus years. It takes zero courage to spend money and not pay for it. We believe we ought to pay for things. That's the difference. Taxes are the money we collect to pay for things. Taxes that we collect to pay for our national security. Taxes we collect to pay for researchers at NIH. Taxes we pay for FBI agents to protect us from terrorists, both domestic and foreign. Those are what our taxes are. Taxes are to help our kids get a college education so we can be competitive in the international community. It's paying for things that we're for. And I will tell my friend, I'm glad to see you come to the point where we're going to pay for things, because very frankly, as the gentleman knows, we're collecting revenues at a far lesser rate than your budget asked to spend. Than your budget, the Ryan budget, which, as you well know, did not balance the budget within the next 20 years. Did not balance the budget within the next 20 years, and was all on the cut side, and the gentleman well knows was not a viable document. It did pass the House of Representatives. It did. I'm not sure it would have passed the Senate, even if the Republicans had been in control of the Senate. But notwithstanding that, let me give you a quote from Ben Bernanke, because I agree with you. And you and I have talked about this privately, and we're now talking about it publicly. We ought to come together. We ought to sit down. We ought to reason together. We ought to be courageous together. We ought to have the will to address this extraordinarily dangerous fiscal crisis that confronts us. Ben Bernanke said this: "We aim to push our elected leaders to face the nation's long-term fiscal challenges with civility, honesty, and a willingness to sacrifice their own re-election. This means not kicking the can anymore. That's why if we abandon the sequester, that'll be kicking the can. If we abandon trying to get a big deal, that'll be kicking the can. This means, as he said, it means reaching a deal on debt, revenue, and spending long before the deadline arrives this fall." Well, it came and it went, and we failed. It means considering all options from entitlement programs, and the gentleman knows I've given a number of speeches on having to deal with entitlement programs. We need to do that. But we also need to deal with taxes and revenues. So we pay for what we buy. And we ought to tell the American people, we can't buy that if you don't want to pay for it. Now, very frankly, I think in the short term, given the economic crisis, lack of jobs, and the struggling economy, raising additional revenues in that time frame, as Bowles Simpson and Domenici-Rivlin both said, is not good policy, and would not propose that. And it has not been proposed, as the gentleman knows. But I will tell my friend that paying for things, and as the gentleman knows, one of the reasons we've gotten into this problem was we didn't pay for things in the last decade. We bought a lot of stuff, and we didn't pay for it. We asked our children to pay for it because it's a delayed effect. We didn't pay for the wars, we didn't pay for the prescription drug bill, and we didn't pay for the tax cuts. Simply giving up revenue, voting for tax cuts, and continuing to buy things is, frankly, I think, not only not courageous, but it is a disservice to this generation and generations yet to come. And I yield to my friend.
I thank the gentleman. And the gentleman asked what regulations that we put forward, our bills removing impediments in the regulatory process. Well, I mean, the Keystone Pipeline, look at that bill. I mean, that bill says we'll create 12,000 construction jobs right away if we can remove the necessary government red tape getting in the way of that project. So I don't see that there's any disagreement over that. But somehow we have your side saying that we shouldn't do that. And if the gentleman's so interested in paying for things, because I don't believe that that's an issue now, because we're not saying remove the sequester. What we're saying is finding cuts elsewhere, but imposing that discipline. But if we're talking about not paying for things, what about the stimulus? My goodness. That was an $800+ billion effect at the end, didn't pay for anything, and ended up imposing all kinds of debt now on us and our children and theirs. And so I am with the gentleman. Let's be courageous. Again, our budget was put out there. In the Joint Select Committee process, our side proposed a plan to come together. And I think that the gentleman knows on his side there were comments made that there was never any coalescence on the part of the Democrats as to a way to come to some solution. So I'm for the courage, but seemingly after looking at the three processes that have taken place, the Biden talks, the White House talks, and those between the Speaker and the President and the leader on the other side of the Capitol, as well as now the Joint Select Committee, all of those did not come to a result. So if that's the case, let's then say, well, wait a minute, maybe something's not working here. Then let's try and see what can work. And what can work, we really can come together in a bipartisan way and find some things that we agree on. Let's set aside those big differences, and the President even suggested back in the spring those big differences may get in the way. So fine, let's find a way for us to at least make some progress, because some progress is better than none. So incremental progress is better than no progress. That's for sure. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his comment, and I agree with it. Some progress is progress, however you describe it. Let me clarify, because I want to make sure in terms of coming together and reaching some progress. He mentioned I'm not sure that every Republican agreed to it. Maybe the gentleman knows. But there was, Mr. Toomey put a proposal on the table which offered $300 billion in additional revenues. Of course, that was offset by an $800 billion increase next year in tax cuts, or a net reduction of $500 billion in revenues for next year. Excuse me, for 13, January 13 on. Let me ask the gentleman, in reaching that, is the gentleman mentioned entitlements. I agreed with him on entitlements. But the gentleman then said he's not for any increased revenues. All three of the bipartisan commissions, the two commissions and the Gang of Six, all three have said that revenues must be part of that picture. That's taxes, fancy word for taxes. Does the gentleman agree with that? Because that certainly was the basis for bipartisanship in all three of those four. I yield to my friend.
Again, I'd say the gentleman, I think our side has demonstrated we've put forward a number of plans, both in these processes that we're talking about, ending with the Joint Select Committee, as well as our budget. And I think we come from the perspective, Mr. Speaker, that let's fix the problem. If you don't fix the problem, and then you want to raise taxes, especially on small business people, you are throwing good money after bad, and you're aggravating the crisis that is gripping this country right here and now as well, which is the jobs crisis. So again, Mr. Speaker, I would say let's agree to work towards common ground. We have laid out very well several times where differences are. But it's time for us to really work to transcend those differences and work in a bipartisan manner and see where we can come together. We've done it. We've done it in the House on the trade agreements. We've done it in the House on the 3% withholding bill. We've done it in the House when it comes to the veteran hiring bill. We can do this.
Now, yes, it's not everything that all of us want, and I share the gentleman's frustration. The gentleman's been here a lot longer than I have. But I will tell you, I think the gentleman's career has been built on progress. So let's work towards progress again. That's all.
I thank the gentleman. I didn't get an answer to my question, however. He has gotten an answer to his solve the problem issue. And what he means by solving the problem is we have to deal with the sustainability of entitlement programs. I have adopted that premise myself in speeches that I've given on numerous occasions on this floor and in other fora around the country. What I'm asking him is, does he also agree, that proposition was adopted by all three of the four that we've discussed, does he also agree, as Mr. Bernanke points out, that revenues or taxes, however you want to call it, resources to pay for what we believe are priorities. For instance, the gentleman correctly believes we need to invest in our national security. I feel very strongly about that. For 30 years, I have voted on behalf of the national security of this nation to pay for it and to pursue weapon systems, personnel levels, strategies to assure our national security. So that I have no qualms with saying that is a priority. If it is a priority, if it is important to pay for it. Paying for it is through revenues. Now, if we don't pay for it, if we borrow for, we're going to borrow over $1 trillion to protect our country, Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places around the world, but particularly those two. That's important. That's important to do. He and I agree. But I think it's important to pay for it, not have my children and grandchildren pay for it, who are going to have to pay for their security in their time. And if we leave them only a legacy of deep debt, they will not be able to do so. That is an immoral policy, in my opinion, as well as a fiscally irresponsible policy. So I asked my friend, I understand we've got to fix the problem. What you're talking about is make sustainable. Demographics have changed. Costs have changed. We have to make sustainable entitlement. But does the gentleman agree that a component of the solution has to be dealing with revenues as well?
I thank the gentleman. And we've always said, certainly, there need to be more revenues. But we need to be focused on how we can have a sustainable growth in revenue flow, and that's from a growing economy. The gentleman asked me before whether we have economists that will endorse our Republican jobs creator agenda. And yes, the Speaker, as he knows, has issued a letter with 132 economists listed on that letter, and I'm going to send it to the gentleman so he can be reminded yet again that, yes, there are plenty of economists who embrace the notion that if we take away the impediments that Washington has put in place, that we can see a growing economy and produce more revenues. Okay? Now, I would say to the gentleman, about his assertion about fixing the problem. He's correct. We need more revenues. We believe we need more revenues. Let's first see if we can fix the problem. First see if we can fix the problem, because just paying for things by raising taxes doesn't fix the problem. We know the demographics of this country. We know 10,000 people every day turn 65 and become eligible for Medicare. We know that Medicare is supported by premiums and taxes paid in, and those revenues cover only a little over half the cost of the program. We know that that means every day times 10,000, you're 50% in the hole. Now, you cannot tax your way out of that. You can't grow your way out of that. You've got to fix the problem. Back to my original notion, we're the only ones that have put a real fix on the table to that problem. And so what the gentleman says is, no, 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 we don't want to fix the problem, we just want to tax people more until sometime, somewhere, we come up with a solution to fix the problem. That's like throwing good money after bad. And raising taxes on small business people is going to get in the way of getting more revenues into Washington, because you're not going to spur the economy into a growth mode. So again, Mr. Speaker, we have been over and over this for months. We know where our differences lie. Let's come together. I would say Keystone Pipeline. Again, the gentleman has a lot of support on his side for the unions in this country. They want to see the Keystone Pipeline built. 12,000 new jobs right away, almost 13,000 construction jobs. We've got manufacturing jobs, spin-offs that will come from that. Why can't we come together on jobs? So again, we can do this. We really can. It's time for us to begin to work together towards productive end. Let's get America back to work, get this economy growing again, and then maybe we can then tackle some of the bigger problems that have eluded us in this quest to try and accomplish it all that has failed this year. And I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his comments, and we ought to come together on jobs. And I would urge the gentleman to bring the President's jobs bill to the floor with such amendments, such changes, such improvements, such deletions as the gentleman feels necessary. The President put a jobs bill which every economist has said will grow the economy, will grow jobs, and it has been languishing in this House since September, while people are losing jobs. Now, the good news is we had some improvement in the economy, and by the way, the Recovery Act worked, as the gentleman knows, and I want to comment on his going into deficits as a result of the Recovery Act. As the gentleman knows, and he voted for, George Bush suggested $700 billion in unpaid spending to staunch the financial crisis brought on by the meltdown in Wall Street in September of 2008 when President Bush was president. He offered a bill. He didn't offer to pay for that, and we didn't pay for it. You and I both voted for it because we thought it was the responsible thing to do to stabilize the financial structure of this country. I believe we were absolutely right at that point in time. Very unpopular bill, but nevertheless I think absolutely essential. So in terms of some 8 months later, confronted, actually it was 5 months later, confronted with the deepest economic crisis since Herbert Hoover, we acted. We acted with the Recovery Act, and the Recovery Act has worked. It was not as big as some asked it to be, but it created some 2 million jobs over the last 36 months. It has not been as robust because we lost 8 million jobs. So if you add 3 back, you lose 8. You haven't gotten to where you need to be. But I tell my friend that we ought to come together. We ought to reach agreement. And we ought to reach a balanced agreement. Your side thinks when we talk about balance, we're talking about revenues. He's right. But when we talk about balance, we're also talking about fixing the problem the gentleman talks about. We're talking about a balanced deal. And I would urge my friend in these coming few days that we have left, where we're apparently going to do either a CR or an omnibus appropriation bill. We were criticized greatly for not doing every appropriation bill individually. You have an appropriation bill, as the gentleman knows, hasn't even passed subcommittee, much less full committee or the floor of the House. But we need to get those bills done because it will give certainty and confidence to the American people that we can work together. I'm hopeful that over the next few months, or a few days, excuse me, we don't have a few months, a few days, that we can in fact do that. And I would urge my friend to let us keep the discipline of the sequester in everybody's mind, because we don't want that alternative. But we want to have that as the alternative that people, so that we can give incentives to work together, to summon the courage, to summon the judgment, to reach an agreement which will get our country on the right track and give our citizens the confidence in their government that we wish they would have. But they will only have it if we do, as the gentleman suggests, come together and work constructively towards a balanced package, not only in terms of a fiscal package, but appropriations. And let me say as well on appropriations, this side of the aisle did what your side of the aisle didn't do over the last 4 years when we were in charge. We made sure those bills passed. Your bills at your levels that we agreed on, and we congratulate you on sticking with the agreement we reached. And I will tell my friend we will do so again if you do not put in the riders that Mr. Boehner and your Pledge to America said ought not to be in must-pass bills. You recall, I'm sure, that Mr. Boehner said we ought not to have extraneous, controversial items which are not germane in bills that must pass. We ought to consider those on their merits. And I will tell my friend that if you do that, as the whip, as I have done on the 2 CRs we passed, on the debt limit extension we passed, and on the omnibus, or the minibus that we just passed, I will help you get those through. We will work together, and America will have greater confidence in us if we do that. I'm prepared to yield back unless the gentleman
I just want
yield
to
to my friend.
thank the gentleman. Look forward to working with him over the next 2 weeks. I just want to clarify, no one's talking about removing the sequester. Absolutely not. And the gentleman knows where I stand on that. I'm talking about making sure that we come together to find the cuts commensurate with those aimed at the Defense Department, and in lieu of those cuts, putting others in place so we can maintain our priority of the national defense of this country. With that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
And I will assure the Majority Leader that we will maintain our flexibility on schedule and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Maryland yields back. For what reason does the gentleman from Virginia rise? Are there any requests for 1-minute speeches? The Chair lays before the House the following personnel request.
Leaves of absence requested for Mrs. Emerson of Missouri for today, Mr. Schilling of Illinois for today, and Mr. Sessions of Texas for today.
Without objection, the requests are granted. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet on Monday next at noon for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business.
Without objection, so ordered. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Woodall, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee for the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the time. You know, for folks who aren't accustomed to seeing what you and I just saw, I think that's quite a treat. In about, what's it turn out to be, about 45 minutes, we've had the Majority Leader for the Republicans and the Minority Whip for the Democrats lay out in intricate detail the differences that we're facing here, as well as the commonalities that we're facing here. That hasn't happened in a little while. It was a little more spirited today than it sometimes is. As they come down on Friday afternoon to share with each other what the schedule will be going forward. But that's always a treat to see, and I hope folks enjoyed being able to be a part of that. What I have on my mind today is twofold. We're talking about jobs. All day, every day in this body we're talking about jobs, and much like you saw the Majority Leader and the Minority Whip lay out competing opinions, competing views of what America should look like going forward, we have competing views about what creates American jobs. And I will tell you that, Mr. Speaker, we sometimes spend too much time talking about the creation side that we ignore the destruction side, because it's absolutely about creating jobs, but it's so much easier to stop killing jobs. Creating jobs, we can disagree about how to make that happen, lots of different proposals on the table, but destroying jobs should be something that we agree today should never happen. Should be something that we say day in and day out we're not going to let happen, and that's the case as we talk about energy independence. Energy independence. I'm going to quote my Georgia colleague, Jimmy Carter, Mr. Speaker. He was giving a speech in 1979, he said, in a little more than 2 decades, we've gone from a position of energy independence to one in which almost half of the oil we use comes from foreign countries at prices that are going through the roof. Sound familiar? Mr. Speaker, does it sound familiar? This was a speech given in 1979. In a little more than 2 decades, we've gone from a position of energy independence to one in which half the oil we use comes from foreign countries at prices that are going through the roof. Tell you what else my Georgia colleague, President Carter, said. I am tonight, in his 1979 speech, setting a goal for the energy policy of the United States. Beginning this moment, he said, this nation will never use more foreign oil than we did in 1977. Never. Hear that. The speech given in 1979 by the President who created the Department of Energy, whose sole mission was to wean the United States from foreign oil and create domestic capacity to meet all of Americans' energy needs, not just because of jobs, but because of national security. This is what the President said. Beginning at this moment, this nation will never use more foreign oil than we did in 1977. Never. Well, sadly, that has not come to fruition. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why that is. Quoting again from President Jimmy Carter, from now on, every new addition to our demand for energy will be from our own production and our own conservation. The generation-long growth in our dependence on foreign oil will be stopped dead in its tracks. Folks, this is President Jimmy Carter. I would argue one of the more liberal presidents that we've had in our lifetime from my great state of Georgia. I'm going to be one of the most conservative members that we have in this U.S. House of Representatives, and I agree with absolutely everything he said. I was 9 years old when he said it. 9 years old when he said it. Never use more foreign oil than we use at this moment in 1977. Every new demand for domestic energy will come from domestic energy production. Who disagrees with that? Who disagrees with one of our most forward-thinking energy independence presidents that we've had? Who disagrees? Let's move forward. Let's look at U.S. oil consumption. 1973 to 2004 is the numbers I brought down today. This top line, U.S. oil consumption. U.S. oil consumption. Here we are in 1979 when the President was giving his speech. All the new demand, he said, will come from U.S. energy supplies. Red lines are oil imports. Red line is the amount of oil that we are bringing in from overseas. Here's the President's speech in 1979. Here's that peak year in 1977. He was giving the speech in 79, but he said, let's look at 1977, a peak year for our imports across the globe. We will never import that much oil again. Well, look out there. Look right out there. 1996, 1997, 1998, through today, we absolutely are, and why? And why? The why is because of U.S. oil production. You know, we talk, and again, you saw it with the majority leader and the minority whip when they were talking about their competing visions for a direction for America. They were talking about jobs, and the minority leader asked, he said, name one economist who will tell you that reducing regulation creates jobs. That was an honest question. Name one economist who agrees that reducing government regulation creates jobs. Folks, look at the Gulf of Mexico. Look at the Gulf of Mexico. Mr. Speaker, you know as I do, as you are from that part of the world, that America's largest shallow water oil drilling company declared bankruptcy in the midst of some of the highest costs per barrel of oil that the world has ever seen. Why? Why, Mr. Speaker, would a U.S. oil producer, the largest in the country, declare bankruptcy when the price that we're getting for a barrel of oil is among the highest in world history? I'll give you the answer. Because the United States government wouldn't give them a single permit to drill. Hear that. More oil imports from around the world than ever before in American history. Focus on both sides of the aisle on creating jobs, and the largest shallow water oil producer in America goes out of business because the American government won't give them permits. Tell me, who believes, Mr. Speaker, that that didn't cost jobs, that that regulatory decision to refuse to allow Americans to drill for American oil in American waters, as they have for decades, who believes that didn't cost us a job? Now, good news. Good news. Those rigs that we would have been using to drill for American oil, they're not being mothballed. They've just gone overseas to drill for foreign oil that we'll then be able to pay top dollar to get back in America. Folks, why? Why? This is an energy independence issue, and it is a jobs issue, and it is a national security issue. Look back. 1980, after President Jimmy Carter's speech that said, we will never import more oil. Importing here 6 million, almost 7 million barrels a day. Fast forward 2008, that number's almost doubled to 13. It's almost doubled to 13. Folks, we're rich with energy in this country. Mr. Speaker, you know as I do, we have been blessed. There are countries around this world that don't have access to fresh water. We do. There are countries around this world that don't have access to beaches and to mountains and to waterways, and we do. There are countries around this globe that don't have access to energy, but we do. Mr. Speaker, who is it who decides that we can't harness U.S. energy? Who is it? Is it some sort of natural law of nature that says we can't harness U.S. energy? No. It's the folks who sit in these chairs. It's the folks who sit in these chairs day in and day out who decide, no, you cannot harness American energy. You know where you ought to get your energy? Get it from overseas. Get it from overseas. Now, you might ask, where is it we have to go overseas to get our energy? And I think that's a fair question. Something that we don't talk about very much when we talk about free trade. You know, every single nation that America has a free trade agreement with, we have a manufactured goods surplus. We talk so much, Mr. Speaker, about the trade deficit that we have with the world. You've heard it. You hear it all the time, a trade deficit that we have with the world. Why? It's energy. It's importing energy that creates the trade deficit. Those jobs we talk about, manufacturing jobs, good, high-paying manufacturing jobs in everybody's district in the country, we have a trade surplus with every single nation with which we have a free trade agreement. What we don't have is an energy surplus. These are the top oil-producing countries in the world. Top oil-producing countries in the world. Our green line up top is the former Soviet Union. It changes over to Russia. You see it's right up there at the top, even as we enter 2010. This beige line is Saudi Arabia. It is also up there at the top as we enter 2010. Down here you see the next biggest oil producers, China in purple and Iran in blue. You tell me if that's who you want to import our energy resources from. And here in red is the United States of America. This is production in millions of barrels per day. This line should be going up. This line should be going up, and this line is going down, and the question is why? Why? Look again to the seats in this room, Mr. Speaker. Look again to the policymakers in this country. Bill after bill after bill we have passed in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, that would free up the American energy production, that would create jobs not tomorrow, not a week from tomorrow, not a year from tomorrow, but today, that would create jobs today, and those bills languish in the Senate. Do not tell me that regulations don't impact jobs. Asking the question, does an economist agree that regulation removal would create jobs? Folks, we don't need an economist. We need any mom or dad in the country. We could get a sixth grader to come and say what's going to happen. If regulations put people out of business, removing those regulations will let them come back in. Largest oil-producing countries in the world: Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and China, and the United States of America. Oh, we're in good company. We are in good company, Mr. Speaker, in the top 5 oil-producing countries in the world, but we're going down while every other country is going up. We are producing less while folks with whom we have fundamental disagreements about a worldview, their production goes up. And so who do we get our oil from, Mr. Speaker? Are we able to find enough oil in this global market to buy only from our friends? No, we're not. We buy from anybody who will sell to us. And I don't need to speculate on what they do with the dollars that we give them. I think we all have suspicions of our own. This chart, Mr. Speaker, is American oil production. U.S. field production of crude oil. We had a slow start back in the 1800s. We didn't know how powerful it was going to be. I'm not going to fault us for that. We started to sort out the technology, Mr. Speaker. We started to put it to good use. You see that spike running right up into the 1970s when President Carter was giving a speech. In fact, there's a little jog in the chart here, Mr. Speaker. You can't see it, but oil production went down, and Jimmy Carter gave a speech. He said, we are going to find domestic sources for American energy. We are not going to sell our future away to the world for the price of a barrel of oil. We are going to do it ourselves. And so you see a uptick. President Carter, you know, he's known for oil embargoes, this energy speech, but really it's solar energy, for which I would say I remember President Carter most fondly. He began that huge push for alternative sources of energy. And he was focused on that throughout this time, but his commitment to energy independence was every bit as large as his commitment to solar energy, and we began to produce more oil. Now follow that line, Mr. Speaker, from 1990 straight down through 2010. Straight down. It's not that we're not blessed with energy, Mr. Speaker. It's that we're also blessed, I'll use the word loosely, with a Congress that believes, or at least believed before this freshman class got here, that they're the smartest folks in the room, and if only the rest of America will do what they want them to do, America will be better off. Mr. Speaker, the decisions in my community about what makes the families in my community better off are made around the family dinner table, not 640 miles away in Washington, D.C. The decisions about how to make ends meet are made around that dinner table, not 640 miles away in Washington, D.C. The decisions about the environment, about transportation, and about jobs are happening at that local level until we destroy that opportunity from Washington, D.C. We have the oil. We could turn this chart around today, but regulatorily, we won't allow it to happen. Next time, Mr. Speaker, someone talks about a jobs proposal, I hope you'll direct them to jobs.gop.gov. Because you know, as I know, Mr. Speaker, at jobs.gop.gov you will find the list of more than 20 pieces of legislation that we have passed in this chamber that sit idle in the Senate that will create jobs again, not tomorrow, not next week, not next year, but today. Today. Where's an economist that believes reducing regulation creates jobs? Folks, that's not the question. The question is there a family in America that doesn't know for a fact that reducing regulations creates jobs? We're not talking about thwarting clean water, folks. I drink out of the same spigot everybody else does. We're not talking about thwarting clean air. I sniff out of the same air that everybody else does. We're not talking about those public health and safety issues. We're talking about national security. when you look at this chart, Mr. Speaker, that talks about the nations that produce oil, the oil that we need to run this country, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and China. Is there an environmental issue when it comes to energy production? You bet there is. You bet there is. But I propose this, Mr. Speaker. Give us energy independence. Give us energy independence in this country, Mr. Speaker, by whatever means necessary. By hook, by crook, you drill, you dig, you put the solar panels on the roof, do whatever you have to do. Give us energy independence today. And I'll be glad to have the discussion that the President from my great state of Georgia started in the late 1970s about having enough alternative energy sources to fund this country. Folks, who doesn't? Who doesn't love green? Green's wonderful. I saw a study the other day that said it's the most soothing color for children. Green's wonderful. Green's not what we get when we have to bargain with Russia, with Saudi Arabia, with China, and with Iran to get the lifeblood that keeps the American economy going. Green is not what we get. Folks, drill, dig, do whatever you have to today to achieve energy independence, to reduce this imported number. Twice as much oil being imported today as we were when President Carter gave his speech that it would never rise again. We can do it, Mr. Speaker. We're Americans. We're the greatest engineers on this planet. We have the hardest working workforce on this planet. We have folks who are willing to save and sacrifice like nobody else on this planet will. We can do it. The question is, Mr. Speaker, are we in the U.S. House, in the United States Senate, down at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in the White House, are we going to free the American people to pursue that goal? You know, I came to this Congress about freedom. I don't actually view my job as the job of being the smartest person in the room. I view my job as protecting the freedom of folks back home, because if you've not been down to the 7th District of Georgia, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you, you're going to find some of the smartest folks in the land right down there. It's kind of the north metro suburbs of Atlanta. And folks run this country from there with the decisions they make every day of the week. We don't need a federal law that tells you whether to buy a Snickers or a Twix. Now, I'm sure we could have a spirited debate about that here in this chamber, but we don't need a law to do it because folks just make that decision every day. Are there enough peanuts in Snickers, Mr. Speaker? Do you think we should have them add some more? You know, those are the kinds of things we decide we're going to regulate out of this body in the name of making everybody happy. Oh, the children. The children, when they get their trick-or-treat bags on Halloween that have the mini Snickers in there, how much happier would they be if each of those mini Snickers bars had 8 peanuts on them instead of just 7? Oh, they'd be so much happier. And it would help peanut farmers in Georgia. It would be a home state jobs creation initiative. We should regulate that from Washington, D.C. No. Because families regulate that. If you don't like the peanuts on the Snickers, you're going to get a payday bar. If there's not enough peanuts in payday, you're going to go on to the next one. We, as Americans, Mr. Speaker, not as congressmen, as Americans, we sort out these decisions 1,000 times a day. 1,000 times a day. How do we get more freedom then, Mr. Speaker, back into individuals' hands? We're talking about jobs, and that's again, energy independence. It's a national security issue. It should be the focus of everything we do in this House because it's a national security issue. If you don't believe we would make different foreign policy decisions, Mr. Speaker, if we were not dependent on people who hate us to fuel this economy with their oil, I'd have to disagree because I'm absolutely certain of it. I'm certain of it. We would make better foreign policy decisions if we produced our own energy resources, and we can. We're the Saudi Arabia of coal, for Pete's sakes. The Saudi Arabia of coal. What is this body over the past several years been trying to regulate right out of existence? Coal. The one resource that we have in abundance more than anyone else on the planet. And folks in their wisdom have decided that it would be better not to harvest our coal and instead to import oil from people who hate us. Folks, that's not freedom. That's decision-making going on right here, and I promise you we'll get it right in the 7th District of Georgia more often than not. And when folks believe they're the brightest people in the room, they start to make mistakes. That brings me to the fair tax. Oh, Mr. Speaker. You know, the fair tax is a tax bill, but at its heart, it's a freedom bill. You know, what the fair tax is, Mr. Speaker, if you hadn't looked at it recently, it's a fundamental change in the way we tax America. Today, we tax income, and of course, the power to tax is the power to destroy. The power to tax, the power to destroy. I ask young people when I go to schools to speak, I say, who wants to come to work for me? I'm going to work you hard, and I'm going to work you long, but I'm going to get you $10 an hour. $10 an hour. I get a couple of hands that go up. Apparently, $10 an hour is not as much today as it was back in my day. I'd have jumped at $10 an hour, but I get hands that go up for $10 an hour. Then I say, but I'm going to have to tax you $9 of that, so you're only going to be able to take home $1. Now who wants to come work long hours for me? All the hands go down. The power to tax productivity is the power to destroy productivity. The power to tax income is the power to destroy income. Why? Why do we want to destroy that makes this country great? So the fair tax shifts that paradigm. Instead of taxing what people produce, we want to tax what people consume, a consumption tax. You've all seen it. It's in your sales tax. Back home in your state, you get taxed on what you consume, and we could do it. We could do it. I'll tell you, the fair tax is a jobs program, because when we stop taxing productivity, we get more of it. That creates jobs. I'll tell you, the fair tax is about transparency. You know, Mr. Speaker, the payroll tax, that 15.3 cents out of every dollar that comes out of your paycheck, Mr. Speaker, that FICA line that you see, now 7.65% comes from the employee, the other 7.65 is hidden as an employer tax, but it's a 15.3% payroll tax. Did you know, Mr. Speaker, that 80% of American families pay more in the payroll tax than they do in the income tax? 80% of American families pay more in the payroll tax than they do in the income tax. Now, I just got back from Thanksgiving. I've got doctors in my family. I've got teachers in my family. I've got all sorts of folks, so I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, I got an earful throughout the entire Thanksgiving dinner. It was more of a 3-day festival for me, Thanksgiving, different sides of the family coming into town, and I got lots of good advice about how we should do things differently up here. But you know, not one person mentioned the payroll tax. Oh, the income tax was a hot topic. Hot topic. But nobody mentioned the payroll tax, and it's the biggest tax that 80% of Americans pay. Why? Because the payroll tax is hidden in every single paycheck that you get. You don't feel it. The government gets its share first. You get your share second. You don't feel it go away unless, Mr. Speaker, you're one of the self-employed folks in America. And instead of paying the 15.3% payroll tax, you pay the equivalent 15.3% self-employment tax. And then you feel the bite of that tax each and every day. You know that's the biggest tax that you pay. The fair tax, instead of allowing all of those taxes to be hidden in business taxes, hidden in income taxes, hidden in payroll taxes, separated out so you don't feel the pain, the fair tax takes your entire federal tax burden and sticks it into one rate, a sales tax on everything that you buy. One rate. Now, that rate would have to be 23%. That's a big number. 23% is what the sales tax rate, the fair tax rate would need to be in order to replace federal income taxes on businesses, on individuals, federal payroll taxes on businesses, on individuals, the gift tax, the death tax, the capital gains tax, the dividend tax, all of those federal taxes on income. The fair tax could replace them all with a 23% personal consumption tax there at the cash register. And you'd see it, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine? Today I can just raise an excise tax here, raise 0.25% on an income tax there. I can do lots of funny math, as they like to do in Washington, D.C. because folks can't feel the pain. They always think, oh, it's not going to tax me, it's going to tax somebody else. Yes, I vote yes because it's going to tax him instead of me. The fair tax puts us all in the same boat and lets us see how much the United States government costs us. You know, I'm a cost-conscious shopper, Mr. Speaker. I brought a marker down here with me today just in case I had to write any big red marks on my chart. This was free with rebate at OfficeMax last week. I don't know if anybody else got it. Free with rebate for this marker. Dollars and cents matter. We make different decisions in our personal purchasing life when we experience those costs. Transparency lets you know how much your government is costing you. Does everybody want a free marker? Yes. Does everybody want to pay the $6.95 it would have been if it wasn't free with rebate? I think not. Puts the entire cost of government out where you can see it. And most importantly, the fair tax is about individual freedom. Folks, have you thought about how the tax code manipulates your life? It doesn't matter whether you sit on the far right over here with the Republicans or you sit on the far left over there with Democrats. Sometimes something happens when you show up in Washington, D.C., and you do. You believe you're the smartest person in the room. Everybody tells you how wonderful you are. You think your ideas are so great. And you decide, you know what? I should reward people for doing this behavior, and I should punish them from doing that behavior. And if I do it, they'll be happier, and America will be better. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put a tax on gasoline because I don't want people driving to work. That's bad. And then I'm going to put a tax credit on electric vehicles, right? Because that's green. We were talking about green earlier, Mr. Speaker. So I'm going to put a tax credit on electric vehicles. So I'm going to punish those people who buy oil at the community gas station, and I'm going to reward those people who go out and buy these $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 electric vehicles. Well, I don't actually think that's very good tax policy. But we have the power to do that. We can manipulate your behavior every day of the week by changing how the tax code touches your pocketbook. You know, I was talking about that electric vehicle tax credit. That wasn't just an example. That wasn't just something I made up. Do you remember when this president passed his energy bill? It included in it a tax credit, $6,500, for everyone who would go out and buy an electric vehicle. Well, again, the Volt was not on the market at the time in the 40s, and the only electric vehicles out there were in the $80,000, $90,000 range. But Americans are industrious, which is why if you leave America to Americans, we're going to be just fine. But Americans are industrious, and what they just found out was if they put brake lights on their golf cart, side view mirrors, some good seat belts up front, some headlights, and windshield wipers, that the Department of Transportation would certify that golf cart as a road-ready vehicle, and they could get the $6,500 tax credit. Well, now it turns out you can't buy an American-made golf cart for $6,500. Our golf carts are a little more expensive than that. But our friends in China, not only are they willing to share their oil with us, guess what? They're willing to share their golf carts with us, too. So it turned out, at the end of tax year 2009, Americans were literally standing in line for a VIN number for a Chinese golf cart so that they could claim this tax credit. Free golf carts for all. Did anybody get one, Mr. Speaker? Did you get that free golf cart? Don't tell me if you did. I know some folks who did. I'm not proud of it, but I know some folks who did. Free golf carts for all from the United States tax code. Folks, when we bring all that power and all that authority here, it gives us the power to manipulate your life, and we don't always manipulate it for the powers of good. And I would tell you, even when we are trying to manipulate it for the powers of good, as the President was trying to manipulate it for the powers of good in his energy bill, we run afoul. We run afoul. Why do we need to pay people to engage in behavior? We make those decisions each and every day. The fair tax abolishes the income tax code so that no longer can people who think they're the smartest person in the room in Washington tell you how to live your life. You know, that's not just a crazy conservative Republican idea. No. We have that idea from folks on the other side of the aisle, too. Let me quote President Barack Obama. You've got too many companies ending up making decisions based on what their tax director says instead of what their engineer designs or what their factories produce. And that puts our entire economy at a disadvantage. If you were here, Mr. Speaker, when the minority whip asked Is there any economist who believes that regulations destroy jobs or that removing regulations would create jobs? We don't need an economist. We've got the President of the United States. Too many companies make decisions based on what their tax director says, based on tax regulation, instead of what their engineer designs or what their factories produce. And that puts our entire economy at a disadvantage. President Barack Obama will go more. We need to make America the best place on earth to do business. A barrier government can remove is a burdensome corporate tax code with one of the highest rates in the world. Minority Whip asks, where's the economist that believes repealing regulation is going to create jobs? It's the President of the United States. A barrier that government can remove is a burdensome corporate tax code with one of the highest rates in the world. We can do that. We don't need world approval. We don't need to shop that around for a decade. We could do that here, and we have legislation drafted to make it so. I'll quote the Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid. Our tax system is broken, and it needs to be fixed. I probably could have quoted any American. We'd have gotten that same sentence. I don't think there's anybody who disagrees with that, Mr. Speaker. Our tax system is broken and it needs to be fixed. Where are the ideas to fix it? I tell you, they are here in this House, Mr. Speaker. The fair tax. The fair tax, this personal consumption tax that I'm talking about, has more co-sponsors on it, more members of Congress who've added their name to the bill, who said, I want to be a part of that, more co-sponsors than any fundamental tax reform legislation in either the House or the Senate. It has the most members in both bodies. We have proposals to fix it. Let me quote House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. Any tax reform and closing of loopholes, which is really important for us to do as a sense of fairness, must also reduce the deficit. The Minority Leader knows we've got to cut out these loopholes, these tax breaks, these deductions, these exemptions. You know, we hear that down here, Mr. Speaker, and you've heard me go on about it in the Rules Committee. Folks come down here and they say, oh, I hate this tax break, or I hate that tax break. Oh, this loophole's unfair, or that loophole's unfair. Folks, every loophole's unfair. Don't just pick on the oil companies because you don't like oil companies. Don't just pick on the solar panel companies because you don't like solar panel companies. Every loophole is unfair. Everything that advantages your business over another business is unfair. Everything that advantages your family over another family is unfair. There is no secret spot that we go here in the Congress to get money to pay our bills. There's not one, no secret spot. It comes out of American taxpayers' pockets, every penny. And when you cut a special break to a special interest, only one of two things is going to happen. They're going to pay less. So either you, the American taxpayer, is paying more, Mr. Speaker, or we, collective America, are borrowing more and passing that bill on to our children, our grandchildren. Why? Why do we give the special tax breaks and the loopholes? Who elected us, Mr. Speaker, to decide who wins and who loses? My people sent me here to protect their freedom. They're going to decide who wins and who loses by the sweat of their brow and the power of their ideas. They didn't send me here to choose. The tax code is not supposed to be about picking winners and losers. It's supposed to be collecting whatever revenue there is that we need to run this country. You can't run a country for nothing. I'm not a guy who says, let's abolish all taxes all the time. We have a social contract in this country, and we have to collect dollars to pay for national defense. We have to collect dollars to pay for Homeland Security. But we don't need to dispense favors from the tax code. Let me tell you, and I challenge you, Mr. Speaker, to help me challenge our colleagues. If you want a special favor for that special interest in your district, don't hide it in the tax code. Bring it down here as a spending bill. Let's debate it. Instead of saying, oh, my favorite special interest back home, I want to give you a 50% tax break. Instead of that, why not just come to the House floor and say, hey, I just want to write you a big check for 50% of your tax bill? Because that's what it is. That's all it is. Every single tax break, every single tax loophole, deduction, exemption, on and on. We call it part of the tax code. It's just the government writing you a check. Folks, we're broke. $15 trillion in debt that we're passing on to our children and our grandchildren. We can't write those checks. The fair tax does away with that. All the exceptions and exemptions makes the tax code transparent for folks to understand. Now, one of the things I hear these days in this tough economic time, and it is a tough economic time, folks say, but Rob, if we had a consumption tax like what you're proposing, people are consuming less in these tough times. And so we're not going to have enough money to run the government. Well, folks are right. We are absolutely consuming less in these tough times, and I encourage you to consume even less going forward. Tighten the belt. Think about that next purchase. Make those decisions. Tighten it as far as you can. Saving is the virtue. For far too long, we've celebrated consumption as the virtue. We have a chance right now, and it's only right now, Mr. Speaker. We haven't had this chance in almost 100 years. America used to produce what the rest of the world wanted. America used to be the exporting giant that sent the world the goods that it needed, and the middle class prospered as a result. Well, we've gotten out of that habit. We've gotten out of the production business. We're putting more businesses out of business every day with the regulations we've talked about earlier. Now we're in the importing business. Now we're in the borrowing business. But, Mr. Speaker, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity right now. Why? Because there are 1 billion new middle-class Chinese consumers coming online today, and they want what we make. There are 1 billion new Indian middle-class consumers coming online today, and they want what we make. We do not have to buy everything from the world. We can produce everything for the world. Consumption is not to be celebrated. Production is to be celebrated, which is why I want to take the tax off production and put it on consumption. This chart represents the blue is personal consumption through the years, the last decade. The red is personal income. And what you'll see is the red line drops below the blue line in bad times and above the blue line in good times. What does that mean? The red line is income. The blue line is consumption. Yes, it's true that in bad economic times we consume less, but guess what? We earn even less than that. Is there less personal consumption going on today, Mr. Speaker? There is, but there's also less personal income going on today. Folks don't have jobs. When you tax income, you tax one thing and one thing only, and that's the production that you had today. When you tax consumption, you tax perhaps production from today, also savings from yesterday, and also borrowing from tomorrow. It's a much more stable income stream for the government. And let me tell you why that's important. Mr. Speaker, you know, we've only been in this House 11 months now, part of the biggest freshman class this body has seen in a generation. But in just this period of time, we have learned that it's hard to cut spending, hard to find agreement. It takes 218 votes to cut spending. I'm having a hard time finding those 208 votes on programs I want to eliminate. It's hard. But because income drops lower in tough economic times than consumption, and because income rises higher in good economic times than consumption, what happens is in the bad times, because we have an income tax, we end up borrowing more to pay our bills, and in the good times, when we have a surplus, how much did we save? Mr. Speaker, do you remember? How much did we save, put away for a rainy day during those 3 years of surplus in the 90s? Well, no, it was zero. Oh, but we spent some more. Oh, boy, did we spend. And by we, Mr. Speaker, I know you weren't here. I wasn't here. But boy, did this Congress spend. In good times, if you send this Congress the money, it's going to spend it. Don't send it. Don't send it. The consumption tax flattens out the volatility of the tax receipts in this country so that in bad times we don't have to borrow as much, and in good times we don't spend as much. That's important because that gets multiplied over Congress after Congress after Congress after Congress. You know, the fair tax isn't some sort of amazing record-breaking idea. It just says, get the government out of the way. You know, when this republic was founded, the only way we funded this government was through consumption. That was the only tax we had, a consumption tax. That's how we funded the government, because our founding fathers said, if you have enough money to import from China and silver from India, then you have enough money to help to keep this country afloat. If you have enough money to spend big, you have enough money to pay taxes big. But let's talk about the individual American family for a moment. You know, back when the income tax code started in the first part of the 20th century, the tax code was 400 pages long. 400 pages long. Now, I read a lot of legislation around here, Mr. Speaker, as you do, and 400 pages is a lot of pages to get through, but I can sort that out. By World War II, 1945, the tax code was 8,000 pages long, grew 20-fold in the first part of the century. By 1984, it was 26,000 pages long, and Mr. Speaker, we're getting past the amount of pages that I can digest. We're getting past the amount of pages that I can sort out on my own. I'm having to hire professional help now. I've got to hire staff like I asked Dunklin here in order to sort through all of this tax code. That's 1984, 26,000 pages. 2004, 60,000 pages. 2011, 72,000 pages, Mr. Speaker. Who is it? Which is that American family that has so much extra time on their hands today that they've sorted through 72,000 pages of tax code to figure out what their tax bill is? It makes a criminal out of all of us. Out of all of us. Did you see the article in Money Magazine? They brought in about 20 different tax preparers, gave them an average middle-class family's incomes and deductions and credits and their life. Of 20 different tax preparers who looked at this one family's circumstances, how many of them do you think came up with the same answer? How many of them came up with the same tax bill? 0. 20 different tax preparers, 20 different answers about what this middle-class American family would owe. You can't sort through 72,000 pages. And why? This is the thing about the fair tax, Mr. Speaker. We have inherited this tax code. This Congress has inherited this tax code from those who have gone before us, but we don't have to keep it. That's what's so great about America. We get to choose. We get to decide. We could erase the tax code today. Instead of 72,000 pages, we could have this. We could have a blank page, and we could begin anew to decide what we want the American tax code to look like. Folks, I don't mind paying taxes. I just don't want to have to pay someone to help me pay the taxes. I don't mind paying taxes, but I don't want to be at risk of getting arrested because I didn't do it right. I only spent 60 hours trying to sort it out, and it should have taken 70 hours. Folks, if you have to pay the government, if the government has to get the money before your family gets the money, why can't we make it easy? And I'll tell you that we can. Making it easy is what it's about for the American family. But making it easy also has an impact on jobs. You know, don't think for a minute that we don't live in a global economy. It hadn't always been true. Back in the 1970s, we were a little more insular as a nation. We could make some different choices. But today, money can leave this country with the click of a mouse. One click of a mouse, and you can transfer $1 trillion from here to Zurich. And guess what? The big CEOs can get on their plane, and they can fly to Zurich, too. And guess what? The folks who live in Zurich, they want jobs, too. Everything that has to do with the prosperity of this country can get up and leave, except for the American worker. You and I are here. You and I aren't going anywhere. So we are invested in making sure that those people who provide the jobs for us stay here too. Look at the average effective tax rates. This is effective tax rates. I've got some other charts that talk about the statutory rate, because the statutory rate for business taxes in America is the single highest statutory rate in the world. Again, you can create a company with a click of a mouse. You can move your trillions with a click of a mouse. Where are you going to move them? You're going to move them to the country that has the highest tax rate in the world, as America does, or you're going to move them to somewhere that has a lower tax rate. Folks, as the minority leader, Whip, was asking if we had an economist, we don't need an economist to sort that out. Every 13-year-old high school student who's had a semester of economics knows if somebody's taxing here and somebody's taxing here, the money's going to go to the low-tax jurisdiction. That's the marginal tax rate. But look at the effective tax rate, because you might be thinking, but Rob, you just told me about all the loopholes and the exemptions and the credits. I bet that's how America stays competitive. We just give away all these freebies kind of under the table to all of our businesses, and that keeps them afloat? No. No. The effective rate is the rate that folks are paying after you factor in all of those loopholes and exemptions. United States, 27.7%. The 58 other countries in the OECD, that group of economically developed countries from around the world, those people who are competitors in the global marketplace, their average rate, 19.5. 19.5. Our friends in the European Union, you've probably been following them. They've got this breed of socialism that's been pervasive over there. It's putting their government out of business one by one by one by one. You probably think they've got the really big tax rate. No. No, they're just 21.9. Big tax rate belongs to the land of the free and home of the brave. Folks, you don't need an economist to sort this out, Mr. Speaker. We know. If we charge employers more to stay here, they're going to do what? Leave. And if we charge employers less in America, they're going to do what? They're going to stay, and more importantly, they're going to come. They're going to come. The tax code is a business opportunity. It does not have to be a burden. We have simply made it a burden in this country. This map shows you what the global tax rates are around the globe. We're here in orange in the 30 to 39% rate. We're actually at 39, so we're the highest of the orange countries. Look here who's in 10 to 19. Here we are. We're up here around 40 in America. Look at our friends to the north. Anybody been to Canada recently? I mean, it's not a bad place. They've got good schools, good energy infrastructure. Wars don't break out there very often. Nobody's out to get them. It's pretty pleasant. They charge businesses about half what we charge for them to have the pleasure of doing business there. Now, I'm just asking. Mr. Speaker, you see the young people that come through this Capitol. Ask them, where would you start your business? Would you start it in the country that has the 40% tax rate, or would you start it in the country that has the 20% tax rate? Businesses don't pay taxes. Consumers pay taxes. And when we burden our businesses, we not only reduce the number of jobs that are available in this country, but we reduce the competitiveness of our goods overseas, and that's where the American competitive future lies. We must become the exporter to the world, and we cannot do it when we hide taxes in the price of everything we pay. Have you ever walked up to a Coke machine? I'm from Atlanta, as you know, Mr. Speaker, and we're the home of Coca-Cola. And I'd like to say wonderful things about Coca-Cola, and I do on a regular basis. But when I walk up to a vending machine out here on Independence Avenue, and there's a Coke machine there and there's a Pepsi machine there, the price is always the same, whether you want to buy a Coke or a Pepsi. Why is that? Why is that? Why is the price the same? Why doesn't Coke decide they just want to make a whole lot of money and they're going to charge $2 while Pepsi's only charging $1? Or even better, why doesn't Coke charge $5 while Pepsi's charging $1? And the answer is competition. There comes a time when you cannot sell your product because the price is too high. These orange nations are raising the price of those products. The green nations are lowering the price of their products. Look at the green. It's our neighbors in Canada. It's our neighbors in Europe. We cannot compete today with this tax code, and who gets to change it? How hard is it, Mr. Speaker? Where do we have to go to find the wisdom to change the tax code? Whoa, good news. It's right here. Right here with us in this body. We can erase the code and start fresh tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, people talk about these things as if they're unattainable. As if they're unattainable. You know, the income tax started. It hasn't always been in this country. It started in the early part of the 19th century. We can stop it just as effectively as they started it. We get to choose. Look here at the top 75 countries. You're going to have a tough time reading it, Mr. Speaker. This is 75 nations around the world ranked by how easy it is for businesses to pay taxes in those countries. Ranked by the ease of tax compliance. Let's see. We got a lot of smart guys in America. Maybe we're up here at number 1. No. There's Hong Kong at number 3. That's a thriving economy. Ireland here at number 5. We've got Canada here. We knew they were going to do well. Denmark, Switzerland. No, there's America. Over in column number 4 at number 69. Mr. Speaker, it's an embarrassment. Top 75 countries by ease of paying your tax bill. America is number 69. They're dictators in these other countries that write the tax codes. They're monarchs in these other countries that write the tax code. We are land of the free and home of the brave. We write our tax code. And you want to know where the jobs have gone, Mr. Speaker? We have run the jobs off one by one by one. Stop the nonsense about talking about growing jobs. You're still running jobs out. Keep the jobs we've got and the new jobs will come. We can fix this. 69 out of 183 countries, America ranks. And in terms of the level of the corporate income tax, the level, 131 out of 183. People wonder, they ask the question all the time, why are jobs leaving America? I don't think government can stop it. Government's stopping it. Government's causing it. Get that, government's causing it. And we can stop it, and we must. But you might be thinking, well, good news, Rob. At least if we've got this terribly burdensome tax code, and at least if we've got the highest corporate rates in the world, at least if we're doing things more stringently than anyone else on the planet is doing them, we must be getting a lot of money for it. Businesses must just be paying tons here. Well, no. No. Revenues as a percent of GDP, you see the U.S. down there in red. Here's the OECD average. We're down there at the bottom. For all the pain and suffering that we put businesses through to make them pay their taxes, for all the jobs that we lose in this country because businesses know it's too complicated to do business here, we don't get much for it. You know, interesting sideline, Mr. Speaker, if you go over to the former Soviet bloc countries, you'll find most of them have flat taxes these days. You know, the flat tax, the consumption tax, sales tax, all of these taxes that we know generate job growth. We can't get one in America, but the former Soviet bloc countries got one. They all got them. Why? Because they were starting new countries where they could start from scratch and do it any way they wanted to. And when you start from scratch, you end up with a flat tax, you end up with a consumption tax, you end up with something that's going to grow your economy instead of punish it. We are punishing our economy, and we're not getting a thing for it. Mr. Speaker, H.R. 25 is the fair tax. H.R. 25. Folks can find it at thomas.loc.gov. That's the Library of Congress website that does all of the legislation, posts it all for all of Americans to see and read. It's only about 115 pages long. It's a short read, not 75,000, but 115 pages long, talking about what we could do if we had the will to do it. I think we do have the will. We have more co-sponsors on the fair tax than any other tax bill in the House. The Senate version of the fair tax, more co-sponsors on the Senate version of the fair tax than any other fundamental tax reform bill in the Senate. We can do it, Mr. Speaker, but it's a heavy lift. And if folks have suggestions, Mr. Speaker, if you would encourage folks, if it's about the fair tax and they know how we can get this country back on track, they can send an email to fairtax@mail.house.gov and you'll be able to see it. If it's about energy independence and how we can change national security in this country, how we can reclaim all of the bounty with which God has bestowed this country, energy independence at mail.house.gov, Mr. Speaker, is an email address that folks can send their ideas to about how we can get this going forward, because I am as certain as I am that the sky is blue that the best ideas for saving America in this time of crisis, Mr. Speaker, they are more likely to come from the family dinner table back home than the committee hearing room here. That's who we are here. We're just folks who used to be at the family dinner table back home, and we've taken 2 years out of our lives to come up here and be a part of the larger discussion, but the good ideas still come from back home. Mr. Speaker, if folks would send in those ideas, we can begin to change this chamber one seat at a time. We can begin to affect this process one member of Congress at the time. Members of Congress don't change their minds or change their votes because of lobbyists on Capitol Hill. No, they change their minds and change their votes because of lobbyists back home. And that lobbyist is named Sally, the pharmacist, and that lobbyist is named Steve, who works at the foundry. Those lobbyists are the individual voters back home. That's what affects change in this place. That's what causes change to happen in Washington, D.C. The American people still run this republic. I see it every day. And, Mr. Speaker, if the American people would reclaim this House by reclaiming their representatives, by pushing forward those common sense ideas, we don't need an economist to tell us, we know it to be true. We can reclaim this country. I'm not telling you it can happen overnight. I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. But if there's one thing I am certain about America, Mr. Speaker, is in times of crisis, we get the job done. If there's one thing I know about the American family, it's you tell the American family they can't, and they will. We can do it, Mr. Speaker. 300 million Americans together can do this, but their ideas have to be heard here. This big freshman class, I would argue, is doing a better job of making the families' hopes and dreams heard on Capitol Hill than we've seen in my lifetime. But we can still do better. Fair tax at mail.house.gov, energy independence at mail.house.gov. We will get those ideas heard. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to you for providing me the time this afternoon. I yield back the balance.